Hello there, my friends, and welcome back to another episode of I Forgot to Turn Off My Damn Fan. Just kidding. Welcome back to another episode of TA with MK. My name is MK, and this is actually my second video for today. I just put out a video about Polkadot or a dot. You can see that link in the description for that. I just wanted to put out a regular video with kind of a market update, just quickly kind of go over the Bitcoin weekly chart, the Bitcoin 4-hour chart, and just kind of mention some ideas as far as the traditional stocks go, the SPX, that is, the S&P 500, which is what I usually look at, which will be opening my time here in about 5 hours. So if you guys are interested in the content that I am providing to you, please, as always, do me a favor and remember to like and subscribe, and let's go. It's TA with MK. It's TA with MK. To start out, we haven't looked at this in a while, so I thought, heck, why not? We're going to start out with the CNN pre-markets, which is just showing us what the futures, or, the after-hour, or in this case, pre-hour markets look like for traditional stocks is the Dow, the S&P 500, and the NASDAQ futures. Now, right now it is green, so that's, potentially a good sign. That's not majorly green, just plus 97, plus 12, plus 60. Usually you want to see over 100, maybe even over 200 to be very confident that it's going to open and go in that direction. But in this case, just seeing green at all when we are potentially at resistance, which we'll go over in a second, is a good thing. So I thought I would just point that out, and we'll move on now to another chart. This next chart would be the ES1 explanation point, which is actually the S&P 500 E mini futures. And the reason we use this chart on the channel is Monday through Friday, or it's like late Sunday through part of Friday, at least where I'm from, it trades 24/7, and so it can actually be a better gauge in a lot of cases of what the pre-market's doing. And so I've been kind of watching this for the last couple of hours. This is just a zoomed in. I don't have really in-depth analysis on this time frame other than this is the highs that we've put in back on the 3rd, again on the 4th, and then we put in a lower high on the 5th. We've basically been getting rejected at around this zone of about 4170, and so the question is, are we just going to get rejected again and ultimately trend lower? Or are we going to be able to see a break, retest, and push higher? Now, we do have about 5 hours until the regular SPX or S&P 500 opens, at least where I'm from, here in Idaho, on the mountain time zone. But, this will obviously be able to put in 3 or 4 more hours between now and then, and I'm going to keep an eye on it to see what it potentially does. But as of right now, it is pushing higher, which when we move over to Bitcoin in a second, you'll see that it is leading, Bitcoin to push higher as well. So, in fact, let's go ahead and just do that now. Let's hop over here to the Bitcoin. We'll look at the 4-hour chart real quick. Just kind of want to kind of go over an idea that I left off on last week. This is also something I posted in my Telegram group. So this might be a good place to transition. Now, we've been ranging basically for the past, ever since the beginning of August now, between 23,500-ish and the bottom being this area I pointed out on a chart last week that was very important to me that we held, which was this zone between about 23K and as low as 22,500 to 600-ish. And I had mentioned in that video, if we started seeing candles close below that, that would be bearish, especially if we broke lower, retested, then there was a good chance we'd start trending lower. We barely wicked down to 22,000, well, not wicked down. We closed one 4-hour candle body below the 22,500 range, but the very next candle was bought up, and we pushed back higher and continued to range in that same range, right? On the upside of that, I'd mentioned that if we could break 23,500, or even this blue zone of about 23,650, that'd be bullish. Well, we're breaking above it as we speak, but it could end up just being the reverse of what happened down here if we're not able to close, in my opinion at least, the next 2 bodies above this. So we've got 10 minutes before this candle body that we're working on right now closes, which is looking pretty hopeful that it will close at least above 23.5, may even be able to close above this 23.650 area. That's kind of the zone I'm looking at. And then we'll just have to see what the next candle does, which will probably close right about the time that the S&P 500 opens. Now, there's some stuff I mentioned on this chart I'm not going to go over now because we talked about it last week. So we'll just move on to the weekly chart just because I want to point out something quickly on that. Now, this is the CME, so the Bitcoin futures chart. And this is the weekly. And one thing that I wanted to point out is that the 200 SMA, which is this yellow one, the yellow moving average, which often in Bitcoin's history has, spotted the bottom or, been known to be the bottom when it tests it. It did break down and we lost that temporarily. But this past week, Well, 2 weeks ago, I guess we'll say on the 25th of July, we were able to close that body right barely above it. This week we got, or this past week that just closed, we got rejected. If you zoom in here at the 200 EMA, which is the one right above it. They're really close to each other, but you got the 200 SMA sitting at just under 23K, and you got the 200 EMA sitting at just under 23,000, or just over 23,800, right around 23,800, right? That's where it got rejected last week, but at least the body, which is the important part, closed above what I would say is the more common one that people trade on, which is the SMA or the yellow one in my case. What I'm looking for now for this week, if we were to break higher, is can we break above the 200 EMA? And no matter how high we go, can we close this next body above, say 24K-ish or something like that, right about where the 200 EMA will be at that point. That'll be very, very bullish to see. But I also want to point out quickly while we're on this chart that if we do get a break to the upside, which we're going to go over that scenario in this video, but if we do get the break to the upside, what do I think is kind of our targets at the moment? Well, we've discussed a couple different times about the 25 to 26K range, but really what it comes down to is if you look at this kind of zone of this large falling wedge that we've been in, the top side of that zone right now, and these moving averages on the weekly, like the 21s up here, they're all sitting at about 28K. So even if we get mega bullish all of a sudden, where we break through my 25 and 26K targets that I previously spoke about, I would imagine that the top of this trend line, these moving averages that are up here, would be definitely an area where I would expect at least a rejection. It may not be, a giant rejection, but I would expect at least a rejection around that area. Now, I'm not predicting that to happen this week or even the next, but that's just kind of the upside if the SPX, which we're going to talk about next, breaks out, starts to push higher, which Bitcoin naturally would follow. What are some of our targets then, for the remainder of, say, this month of August? Well, that would kind of be my top side of that, which would be these where this candle bodies were all using as support previously, and these ones back here, which would be right, obviously somewhere between 28,000 and 30K. 28 being the more realistic target, 30 being if, the top side of that target. That'd be the zone anyway that I would be looking for if we remain super bullish over the course of, the next few weeks. I guess quickly before we talk about the SPX, I should also quickly mention that I guess the bearish side is if SPX gets rejected, say today or over the next couple days, and does a retrace, what we'll be looking for on Bitcoin is for it to test some of this lower support back down around, that 22,500 yet again. If that breaks, I'm looking at 21K to hold. But as far as a zoomed out weekly perspective, what would remain bullish for us is if we could close the next weekly candle still above 22,950 in this case, which is where the on the CME at least, that the 200 SMA or this yellow moving average sits. So that's going to be the important thing as far as your super zoomed out, is if we can go 3 straight candles, above it, that would be very bullish. And even more bullish would be, like I said, if we could break and hold above, 24K, which is where the 200 EMA sits. Now, if we were to close this week back below the 200 SMA, which is 22,500-ish region, or well, right here it says about almost 23K. But if we were to break down and close below that, then there's a good chance that we could come back down here and at least test 21K, like I said. If that doesn't hold, we'd be looking at, 19,000, which is the bottom of the range. And, we'll just take it level by level at that point. But those are kind of the key levels that we keep an eye on as this week progresses. And just to finish up today's video, we'll quickly give an update on the SPX, or the S&P 500. Pretty simple. I mentioned last week at one point we were being rejected by the 200 SMA, which is the yellow on the 4-hour. And then it used the 200 EMA as support. At that point, it was able to break above and go to our red zone of resistance that we've been talking about as being the next major zone we need to break above if we want to see, market continuation to the upside. And right now, it's, most recently before it closed last week, was using the 200 SMA as support. Now, last week, I mentioned this, if we got rejected, which we ended up going a little bit higher, that this green box down here would be bullish to see a bounce at. I would now say we'd want to move that up to here. We'd want to see if this does get rejected and consolidate a bit, that it comes back down and gets scooped up down here at around, this 4,060 to 70 range. But really, if we close anything below that, at that point, we would have all these moving averages here, which is the 221s, the 21 EMA and SMA, and then, of course, the 200s above us, which could then start to act as resistance. These ones down here are the 50, but we don't really want to see those be our last leg of support. It'd be more bullish if we do pull back, that we bounce quicker than later. And really what I'm looking for mega continuation, which is what I want to end this video on, whether it happens today, over the next 2 days. I expect volatility, but even if we were to come back down, maybe we use the 200 EMA, which is the yellow or the blue one, sorry, as support one more time. We really want to see the break of this red zone and then a retest and start to push higher. This area has acted as support back here on many occasions, and most recently as major resistance. So of course, naturally, if we were able to flip that back as support temporarily, which is this zone around 41.75, then I would expect us, if we zoom out, to at least see a push back up to this upper trend line, which was resistance once, twice, and where does that trend line sit right now? If we were to hit it within the next, say, week or two, could see us go up to about 43.30, somewhere in that range. The next zone, if we break this red that I'd be looking at, or at least the next area of major resistance, would be my orange line here, which sits at about 4,300. So we're going to keep a close eye on that, which will be the driver for what Bitcoin does, which will naturally be the driver for whatever your favorite altcoin will do as well. As always, just remember the best way to manage risk sometimes is to take more of a wait and see approach. You will miss some of the move, but at the end of the day, missing some of the move is okay. It's more important that you manage your risk and, wait for a trend to establish itself. We've been in an established uptrend to this point, but the SPX will be opening tomorrow, or I guess today, here in a few hours, at overhead resistance. And sometimes the best approach is to wait and see, does that break and retest and push higher? Because if it does, yes, it will drag crypto and Bitcoin along with it. And at that point, we'll just zoom in and do what we do best and look for some new entry ideas. As always, if you guys are enjoying my content, please remember to like and subscribe. We'll catch you tomorrow. It's T-A